8 seconds on a raging bull. 2 minutes unconscious in the dirt. And a decision made by a 7-year-old boy that no one saw coming. A moment that would change everything. But before we go further, write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I want to see how far these stories travel. There are people who never seem to question themselves. The kind of confidence that walks the thin line between certainty and arrogance, but somehow always works, because they're just that good. Colt Matthews was one of them. 31 years old. 15 spent inside rodeo arenas, riding bulls that most men wouldn't even dare to look at. State to state, arena to arena. He had built a name. And that Saturday afternoon, somewhere in Texas, his name echoed louder than ever. 8,000 people filled the stands. Music thundered through the speakers. Dust hung in the air, mixed with the smell of sweat, leather, and popcorn. Just another day for Colt. Backstage, everything was routine. He tightened his belt, adjusted his glove, checked the vest. No hesitation, no wasted movement. A younger rider approached, nervous energy written all over him. "Hey, the bull you're getting today? They say he's already put 3 guys in the hospital this year." Colt didn't even look up. "I've handled worse." The kid lingered for a second, unsure. "I'm just saying. I know exactly what I'm doing." That was the end of it. Everyone knew Colt. Advice didn't stick to him. Hours earlier, far from the noise, Rebecca stood in the kitchen. She was packing sandwiches into a small bag, moving quietly, like she always did before these events. At the table, Mason sat with a red cap tilted sideways, coloring something with intense focus. "Mom, is Dad going to win today?" Rebecca smiled faintly. "He always does." She paused, just for a second. "He never gets scared," Mason added. Rebecca looked at him carefully. "Everyone gets scared sometimes, sweetheart." Mason shook his head. "Not Dad." Rebecca didn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't know anymore. Colt had changed over the years. Hardened. Closed off. Especially after his mother passed away. Mason went back to coloring. Then, quietly, "Can I take Grandma's rosary today?" Rebecca froze. That blue rosary. It had been Colt's mother's. The same woman he hadn't spoken about in over a decade. Rebecca swallowed the emotion rising in her throat. "Of course. Just keep it safe, okay?" Mason nodded, clutching it tightly. "I'm going to pray for Dad, like Grandma used to." Rebecca turned away for a moment. Mason had never met her. And yet somehow, he carried her faith. A faith Colt had completely abandoned. Colt stepped into the room, grabbing his keys. "Let's go. We're running late." The arena was alive by the time they arrived. Rides were already underway. Cheers, whistles, tension in every breath. One rider had already been carried out, broken arm. The crowd had clapped politely, then moved on. Rebecca and Mason took their usual seats, 3rd row, left side. Mason kept his hand inside his pocket, fingers wrapped around the rosary beads. The announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most respected riders on the circuit, Colt Matthews." The crowd exploded. Colt stepped into the chute. The bull waited. Massive, violent, unpredictable, bone crusher. Nearly 1,000 pounds of raw force. Colt climbed on, wrapped the rope, locked his grip. One breath. Then he nodded. The gate burst open. 3 seconds. Perfect. 4 seconds. Controlled. 5 seconds. Flawless. The crowd rose to their feet. 6 seconds. The bull twisted. Faster than expected. Sharper. Wrong direction. 7 seconds. Colt lost balance. And then, he hit the ground. Everything changed in an instant. Before anyone could react, the bull struck. Once. Then again. Ribs. Leg. The sound sickening. Rebecca covered her mouth. Mason screamed. "Dad!" Bullfighters rushed in, pulling the animal away. Colt didn't move. Not even a twitch. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. The kind that grips thousands of people at once. Paramedics flooded the arena. Rebecca held Mason tightly as he tried to break free. "I have to go to him." "No, Mason, you can't." But he slipped away. Small enough. Fast enough. No one stopped him. He ran. Across the edge of the arena. Past distracted guards. Into the dirt. A paramedic moved to block him. "Hey, kid. He's my dad." The man hesitated. Just long enough. Mason reached him. Hands shaking. He pulled the blue rosary from his pocket. Almost dropped it. He grabbed Colt's hand. Placed the rosary inside. Closed his father's fingers around it. Tightly. "Dad," Grandma said, This protects you, please. His voice broke. He couldn't finish. Security arrived moments later, gently pulling him away. Mason watched as his father was lifted onto the stretcher, the rosary still locked in his hand. Hours later, hospital. Rebecca sat in a cold waiting room. Time didn't move. Mason slept against her, exhausted from crying. The doctor had spoken already. Surgery was successful, but critical condition. Broken ribs. Internal injuries. Possible spinal damage. Next 48 hours. Uncertain. Rebecca didn't cry. She couldn't. Not yet. A nurse approached quietly. You can see him now. Room 304. Machines beeped steadily. Colt lay still. For the first time in years. He looked small. Fragile. Rebecca stepped closer. Took his hand. And then, she saw it. On the nightstand. The blue rosary. Placed there carefully with his belongings. The beads caught the cold hospital light. Rebecca picked it up slowly. Held it in her hands. She had never prayed before. Not really. Didn't know how. Didn't know what to say. But in that moment, none of that mattered. She closed her eyes. And whispered, "Please, he's all we have. Please." The word barely left her lips. Rebecca placed the rosary gently back on the table and stepped out of the room, wiping her tears before anyone could see them. 3 days later, Colt woke up. But waking up didn't mean relief. The pain was everywhere. It hurt to breathe. It hurt to shift, even slightly in the bed. It hurt just to exist inside his own body. Medication dulled it, but never fully. Rebecca came every day. Mason came with her. The boy didn't talk much anymore. He just stood there, holding his father's hand. Quiet. Watching. Trying to understand how someone who once seemed indestructible could suddenly look so fragile. Something inside him had cracked. That afternoon, the doctor entered. Dr. Patterson. Direct. Cold. Precise. Exactly how Colt preferred it. No false hope. No comforting lies. "Mr. Matthews, I need to be honest with you." Colt didn't move. "The spinal injuries are serious. We stabilized them, but there's damage that may be permanent." Colt swallowed slowly. "What does that mean?" "It means there's a real chance you won't regain full mobility." Silence filled the room. "You're telling me it's over?" The doctor didn't hesitate. "I'm telling you your career as a bull rider is over. 15 years. Gone. Just like that. Everything Colt had built, everything he was. Finished. How long until I'm out of here?" "If recovery stays on track, 2 weeks. After that, months of therapy. We'll see how your body responds." The doctor left. Colt stared at the ceiling. White. Empty. Unmoving. His entire life had just collapsed, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. For the first time in years, Colt Matthews felt something he had forgotten existed. Real fear. The days blurred together. Pain. Medication. Visits. Silence. Then more pain. Rebecca tried to stay strong. Mason stayed close. Colt smiled when they were there. Made small jokes. Pretended. But when night came, and the door closed, everything fell apart. 1 week later. 2 a.m. The room was dark. The pain was worse that night. Sharp. Relentless. Colt couldn't sleep. He turned his head slightly. The rosary was still there. Blue beads catching the faint hallway light. He hated that thing. Or at least, he thought he did. It had been his mother's. She carried it everywhere. Every ride. Every competition. Front row. Always praying. Always believing. And Colt? He had laughed it off. If you're good enough, you don't need prayers. When she got sick, she kept praying. Every day, she asked him to join her. He refused. "Mom, you need doctors. Not prayers." 6 months later, she was gone. And Colt buried everything with her. Faith. Belief. God. All of it. If God existed, his mother would still be alive. That was the logic. That was the truth he chose. But now, lying there, broken, alone, in pain that medicine couldn't fix, Colt found himself staring at that rosary. And something inside him shifted. Just slightly. A thought. A possibility. What if she had been right? What if there was something beyond control, beyond skill, beyond him? The idea was small. Fragile. But it was there. He closed his eyes. Tried to sleep. 5:30 a.m. Colt woke up. Not from pain. Not from noise. From something different. The room was still dim. Monitors beeped softly. Everything seemed normal. Except the air. There was a scent. Roses. Strong. Fresh. Impossible. There were no flowers. No open windows. Nothing that could explain it. Colt turned his head slowly. And then, he saw her. A woman stood beside his bed, draped in blue. Still, silent, real. Colt tried to speak. Nothing came out. He couldn't move, could barely breathe. She looked at him, and in that single moment, everything changed. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was peace. Not the kind you think about. Not the kind you force. Something deeper. Something that entered him and erased everything else. The anger, the fear, the pain, the pride. Gone. No words were spoken, but he understood. You are not alone. And then, something broke inside him. Colt started crying. Not quietly. Not controlled. He broke. He cried for his mother. For the years he pushed her away. For the anger he carried. For the pride that blinded him. For the fact that he almost left his son without a father. He cried because for the first time, he understood. He was never indestructible. And he didn't have to be. She stayed there. Silent. Watching. Loving. How long? He didn't know. Minutes? An hour? Time didn't exist anymore. Eventually, the tears slowed. His breathing steadied. He opened his eyes fully. She was gone. But the peace remained. The scent of roses still in the air. And something inside Colt had changed forever. He looked at the table. The rosary. Still there. His hands trembled as he reached for it. He picked it up slowly. Held the beads. Cold glass against warm skin. I don't know how to do this. His voice was barely a whisper. Mom, you were right. A pause. I'm sorry. The words weren't perfect. The prayer wasn't complete. Fragments of memory. Pieces of something he once rejected. But it was real. And when he finished, he pressed the rosary to his chest, closed his eyes, and for the first time since the accident, he slept. Without pain. Morning came. The nurse walked in. Good morning, Mr. Matthews. How did you sleep? Colt hesitated. Fine. She checked the monitor. Frowned slightly. Your vitals improved overnight. She left. Colt stared at the ceiling again. But this time, it wasn't empty. He didn't tell anyone. Not Rebecca. Not Mason. Who would believe him? But he knew. What he saw? What he felt? That was enough. And from that day forward, something inside Colt Matthews was no longer the same. You're different. Colt smiled slightly. For the first time, that statement didn't bother him. 2 weeks after the accident, Dr. Patterson walked in for the final evaluation. Same routine. Same serious face. Same quiet authority. He checked the scans. Compared them. Paused. Longer than usual. Colt noticed. Are they bad? The doctor shook his head slowly. No, they're better than expected. He kept looking at the images, almost like he didn't fully trust what he was seeing. The recovery is progressing faster than it should. Colt felt something tighten inside his chest. Hope. Careful, unfamiliar hope. There's still damage, the doctor continued. You'll need therapy. A lot of it. But your prognosis, he looked directly at Colt, has improved significantly. When the doctor left, the room went quiet again. Colt turned his head. The rosary. Still there. Exactly where it had been. Thank you. The words came out softly. But this time, he meant them. 3 weeks after the accident, Colt went home. Rebecca helped him into the car. Slow movements. Careful steps. Pain still there. But different now. Manageable. Mason sat in the back seat, holding a drawing. He waited until Colt noticed. Do you like it, Dad? Colt turned. A picture. 3 figures holding hands. Him, Rebecca, Mason, and in the corner, a blue rosary. Colt smiled. I love it, son. On the drive home, Mason fell asleep. The car was quiet. Fields passed outside the window. Normal life, slowly returning. After a few minutes, Rebecca spoke. Are you going to tell me what happened? Colt kept looking forward. What do you mean? Colt, I've known you for 12 years. A pause. This isn't just the accident. He didn't answer right away. Because how do you explain something like that? I don't know if you'd believe me. Try me. He exhaled slowly. There was a night, in the hospital. I was alone. In pain. Thinking about everything I lost. He stopped. Searching for words that didn't exist. I saw something. A dream, maybe. I don't know. But it felt real. Rebecca didn't interrupt. Do you remember my mom? How she used to sit in the front row? Praying with that rosary. Rebecca nodded. I remember. I used to think it was pointless. Like she was wasting time. That faith didn't change anything. Colt's voice lowered. I think I was wrong. Rebecca didn't say anything. But a tear slid down her cheek. The following months were the hardest of Colt's life. Physical therapy, 4 times a week. Pain, frustration, slow progress. Days where nothing improved. Days where quitting felt easier. But every morning, before leaving, Colt picked up the rosary. He didn't know all the prayers. He forgot words, mixed them up, but he tried. And Mason noticed. One Sunday morning, they sat together, father and son. "Say it like this, Dad," Mason said softly. "Hail Mary, full of grace." Colt repeated every word, carefully, like learning something new. Rebecca stood in the doorway, watching. The man who rejected faith for years was now learning how to pray. From his 7-year-old son. 4 months later, final therapy session of the week. The therapist looked at Colt. "I want you to try something." "What?" "Walk." Colt frowned slightly. "Without the walker." Silence. "You think I can?" "There's only one way to find out." Colt stood up. Slow. Careful. Weight shifted. Legs tense. Step 1. Unsteady. Step 2. Stronger. Step 3. Better. 4. 5. He stopped. Turned back. The therapist smiled. "You did it." No support. No help. Colt felt something rise inside him. Not just hope. Something deeper. Belief. That night, they celebrated. Simple dinner. Nothing fancy. But it meant everything. Afterward, Colt called Mason outside. They sat on the porch. Stars above. Silence around them. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, Dad." "Why did you put the rosary in my hand that day?" Mason thought for a moment. "Because Grandma used to do that." Colt felt his chest tighten. "She always had it with her, right?" "Yeah." Mason looked at him seriously. "So I thought if I gave it to you, maybe she would help you." Colt's eyes filled with tears. "You think it was her?" Mason shook his head. "I think it was the one Grandma prayed to. The lady in blue." Colt pulled him close. Held him tight. "Thank you, son." They stayed there in silence. And somewhere, deep inside, Colt knew his mother would have been smiling. Because sometimes, the biggest miracles don't happen when we demand them. They happen when we stop fighting. When we admit we can't do everything alone. When we finally accept we need help. And sometimes, all it takes is the faith of a child, a 7-year-old boy, holding a blue rosary, believing someone was listening. If you made it this far, write in the comments, Mason's miracle. Because sometimes, the strongest faith doesn't come from adults. It comes from a child who simply believes.